האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We're in the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Pinchas. We are going to do Os Aleph. We're not going to complete the entire Os. It's very lengthy, but we'll certainly complete the first major section, first major theme that Zera Shimshon talks about. Before we start, we're going to look at the first 2 or 3 psukim in Parshas Pinchas, and let's get right to the psukim. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Pinchas the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, Heishives chamasi me'al b'nei Yisrael, he removed my anger from on b'nei Yisrael, b'kano es kinosi b'socham, in expressing my jealousy that I felt among them, v'lo chilisi es b'nei Yisrael b'kinosi, and I did not destroy b'nei Yisrael in my anger or in my jealousy. Lochein emor, therefore I say, hineni nosein lo es brisi shalom. Behold, I am giving to him, meaning to Pinchas, my covenant of peace, of shalom. Those are the first 3 psukim, and of course the incident that happens at the end of last week's parsha of Parshas Balak, where Pinchas takes the law into his own hands and he kills Zimri, the Nasi, the leader of the tribe of Shimon, who is having intercourse with a Moabite princess, a Kozbi Bas Tzur, and Pinchas kills both of them, and this puts an end to the plague that was killing many members of Bnei Yisrael. And then our parsha starts with the reward and the recognition that Pinchas receives. So the Zera Shimshon is going to discuss this whole situation. Again, Os Aleph in the sefer, it's Daf Reish Nun Beis. Medrash Rabbah. In the Medrash Rabbah on Bamidbar, on our parsha, it states, Pinchas ben Elazar v'chule. So the Medrash starts off by identifying our pasuk, the first one in the parsha. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Badin hu sheyitol sechara. It is justified, it is lawful that Pinchas receives his reward. Hadohu dichsiv, and this is what's written, Lochein emor, therefore I say, Hineni nosein lo v'chule. Therefore, behold, I am giving to him my bris, my covenant of peace, etc. So the Medrash Rabbah states that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was, in the first few psukim of our parsha that we read a moment ago, was coming to announce, so to speak, that Pinchas deserved to be rewarded for his actions, and the reward was brisi shalom, my covenant of peace, along with other things that are talked about and that we'll discuss. So the Zera Shimshon comments, HaMedrash tzarech be'or. This medrash requires explanation. There's more to it than meets the eye, and it requires explanation. Ve'od, in another point, Omru zichronim levracha, Chazal say in Maseches Sanhedrin, ve'heviu Rashi b'chumash, and Rashi on Chumash brings down a quote from this Chazal, from this Gemara, Lefi shehoyu hashvatim mivazim oso, since the other tribes, other people amongst Bnei Yisrael were trying to humiliate and make fun of Pinchas, v'chulei, etc., and this is what they said, Ben Puti Zeh. They called Pinchas Ben Puti, son of Puti, shepitem avi imo agolim la'avodah zara, whose mother's father, in other words, his maternal grandfather, fattened calf for the purposes of idol worship. This is a reference to Yisro, whom we know one of his names was Putiel, and so they called Pinchas Puti, and they said, "You're a descendant of Yisro." Pinchas's mother was either the daughter or more likely the granddaughter of Yisro. And the Torah specifically tells us back in Shmos that Elazar had married, Pinchas's father Elazar had married a daughter of Yisro and Mibenos Putiel, from the daughters of Putiel, and Chazal identify that as Yisro. And again, it's not clear, is this the daughter of Yisro or the granddaughter of Yisro? But nonetheless, people made fun of him and said, your grandfather or your great-grandfather Yisro was named Putiel because he used to worship idols, and he was an expert in all the avodah zarah in the world, and he fattened calves to sacrifice to all these idols. Yaharog Nasi Shavit mi Yisrael. And this Pinchas, who is a descendant from an idolater, from a person who used to be an expert idolater, he is going to kill a Nasi, a prince, a leader of one of the tribes of Yisrael. Lefichach, therefore, Bo HaKosav, therefore the pasuk came again that we read a moment ago. V'yachaso, and gave his lineage, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. The Torah specifically says, if you want to focus on Pinchas's lineage, focus on his paternal lineage. He is the son of Elazar, and Elazar is the son of Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, and one of the great spiritual leaders the Jewish people have ever known. So the Torah is doing that according to the Gemara in Sanhedrin as a response to the fact that people were jeering at Pinchas and making fun of Pinchas, and more seriously questioning his actions, questioning his right to kill Zimri. And they were saying Pinchas came from a lineage of avodah zarah, and here he goes and he kills a nasi, a leader, a tribal leader amongst Bnei Yisrael. Umilvad masha kosavnu b'sof parsha hakodemes. And in addition to that which we've written at the end of the previous parsha, meaning at the end of Parshas Balak, yesh ledaktek, we need to analyze lama dafka. Why is it specifically mipnei shehu ben Yisro? Because Pinchas was a son, a grandson, or a descendant of Yisro, eino yochol laharog. That therefore people were saying he should not have been allowed to kill Zimri, v'chule, etc. So the Zera Shimshon's questions here are as follows. His first question was simply to say that the Medrash Rabbah that he started with needs to be clarified, needs to be understood better. What exactly is the Medrash Rabbah coming to say? Because the point of that question is, if all the Medrash Rabbah is coming to say is that Hashem wanted to let everyone know what Pinchas's reward was and that he deserved this reward, one can kind of see that just from looking in the psukim. Well, if you look at the psukim, you see that Pinchas is receiving a reward for his actions rather than being punished for his actions. He's being rewarded for his actions. That's clear. That's relatively clear from the psukim themselves. So the Zera Shimshon says, well, why is the Medrash kind of making that connection or making that point? There must be more to it. And then in addition to that, the Zera Shimshon wants us to know about this Gemara that says that the reason the Torah went out of its way to tell us exactly Pinchas's lineage, because certainly from previous psukim, we would know who he was, the son of Elazar, who was, of course, the son of Aaron. These are very famous people in Bnei Yisrael and in the Torah. So why did it do that? In order to respond to the allegations and the accusations that were being made against him. And then thirdly, the Zera Shimshon says, why is it, what was the rationale, what was the reasoning that caused people to say, because he's a descendant of Yisro, he should not have been allowed to kill Zimri? What specifically was it about being a descendant of Yisro that made them say that? So let's move on to the next paragraph, and the Zera Shimshon will begin to address these questions. V'yesh lomar, and we can say, Shesham ba'oso shah, at that time, during this incident when the Moabite women were sent to seduce members of Bnei Yisrael and to get them to not just commit sexual immorality, but also to get them connected to the idol of Baal Peor, to the idol worship of Baal Peor. At that time, Himid Moshe Dayanim Harbe. Moshe set up many judges. Moshe appointed judges and set up judges, Kedei Ladun Osam, in order to judge those Ha'ovdim LePeor, who were involved in the worship of this idol Baal Peor. Ki de'isa b'medrash al pasuk, as it states in the medrash on the pasuk, kach es kol rashei ha'am, take all of the heads of the people, v'huka osam, and hang them up, v'chule, etc. Vayomer Moshe al shoftei Yisrael, v'chule. And Moshe said to the judges of Bnei Yisrael, etc. These psukim come from the actual incident at the end of Parshas Balak when the Moabite women came in and began seducing some of the men of Bnei Yisrael to sin with them. So Hashem says to Moshe, it's time to take action, and it's time to execute some of these people and hang up their bodies. And you need to get the sinning and the transgressions, the serious sinning and transgressions to stop. And you also, Moshe immediately started talking to the shoftim, to the judges, in order to deal with the situation and to reestablish the rule of law, so to speak. And when the people of the different tribes saw Pinchas harig lezimri, that Pinchas went at this moment when Moshe was setting up judges in courts and strongly pushing for there to be a restoration of law and order, when the people saw that Pinchas went and killed Zimri, hayu sovrim, they thought, shegam hu nisman elodun dinei nefashos, that he was also appointed to judge dinei nefashos, to judge capital cases. In other words, they assumed Pinchas was another judge that Moshe appointed to deal with these problems and to start handing out death penalties, capital punishment, if appropriate and if necessary. V'hisra'amu al zeh. And they made a fuss, they made a loud clamor against this. Mishum disnan b'Sanhedrin perek dalet, because they knew the Torah shebal peh, and which is brought down to us in the fourth perek in Maseches Sanhedrin. Ein hakol ksherin lodun dinei nefashos. The Mishnah over there says that not everyone is fit to be a judge, a dayan, in cases of dinei nefashos, in capital cases. So the Gemara says, my taima, what's the reason why the Mishnah stated that not everyone can judge these cases? And it answers, Keshem sheha bezdin menukin b'tzedek, just like a bezdin must be. We're talking now about a bezdin of Chaf Gimel of 23 that is empowered to judge capital cases. So just like a bezdin of 23 has to be minuk and has to be absolutely clear and clean, b'tzedek, in justice and applying justice, kach menukin mikol mum. So too, the judges, the dayanim, have to be free of all mumim, of all blemishes. And what do we mean when we talk about being free from a blemish? Upirish Rashi explains, pegam mishpacha. This means a family blemish, a blemish in their lineage. So the dayanim, the judges that sat on the bezdin of 23 and judged capital cases, any judge, any dayan who was a member of a court that could judge a capital case, in addition to the knowledge that he had to have, in addition to the meticulous religious observance that he had to have, he also had to have a clean yichus, a clean lineage. And of course, Pinchas did not have that. V'chsiv, and the Gemara continues and brings down a pasuk, v'his yatzvu sham imach, that this actually comes from the Maisa in which Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to, this is not the Maisa that we read about at the end of Balak or in Parshas Pinchas. This comes from later in the Torah when Hashem tells Moshe to appoint 70 men, and they will become a Sanhedrin. They will become a court to help Moshe lead, guide, and judge the people. So over there, Hashem says, "V'his yatzvu sham imach," and these men, these 70 men, should stand with you. And the Gemara says, "Miyuchasin kamoscha." They need to have the same pure lineage that you have, Moshe Rabbeinu. So we understand now that when people were trying to humiliate Pinchas, make fun of Pinchas, and again, more importantly, question his right to kill Zimri, they were making a technical legal claim. They were saying Pinchas should never be allowed to be one of the judges that Moshe Rabbeinu appoints to judge capital cases because his lineage, his yichus, is not clear. He, on his mother's side, is a descendant of Yisro. Again, either Yisro was his grandfather or his great-grandfather, And so therefore, he should not be allowed to judge these cases, and Moshe Rabbeinu should not have appointed him to be a judge as part of a bezdin that is judging capital cases. And therefore, Amru Hashvatim, the members of the tribe said, this man, Pinchas, who does not have a good, clear lineage, he should not be allowed to judge these cases of dinei nefashos, and meaning he shouldn't have been allowed to kill Zimri. Even if the truth was Zimri chayav misa, even if, according to the halacha, Zimri was chayiv misa, he was liable for capital punishment. Nonetheless, Pinchas also shelo kedin. Nonetheless, Pinchas acted against the law because Pinchas never should have involved himself in judging capital cases because of his blemished lineage. Aval ta'u bisvarosam. The Zera Shimshon says, but the people of the tribes who were making this claim made a mistake. They were in error in their reasoning. Shemasha asa Pinchas, because that which Pinchas did in killing Zimri, eino davar hatoloi b'dayanim, was not a matter that was dependent upon a bezdin, a court, and a court case and legal proceedings. Ela adarabba, but just the opposite. This was not a legal proceeding. Amrina b'perek testis Sanhedrin, Chazal say in the 9th parak of Masechah Sanhedrin, haboel aramis, a Jewish man who has intercourse with an Aramean woman, or for our purposes, a non-Jewish idolatrous woman, kanoyin pogim bo, zealous individuals can attack him and kill him. V'im ba limloch, and if he comes to counsel with a court, let's imagine this zealous person is not sure of the law or is not sure of his rights, and therefore he comes to check in with the bezdin and says, am I allowed to kill this man? Ein morin lokain. The bezdin does not teach him. The bezdin does not instruct him to act. The whole point of what Pinchas did is that it was a completely independent act, and it was based on a teaching in the Torah Shebal Peh, which is called Kanoim Pogin Bo. Zealous individuals, meaning individuals who are outraged and cannot stand by quietly while certain actions are done, which bring Chilul Hashem, which bring a desecration of Hashem's name. They are allowed to take action on their own, but only if it's on their own, only if it's independent from Bezdin. If they go to Bezdin, Bezdin is obligated to tell them no, bring the person into the court, and will follow legal proceedings in the court. However, if the person acts on his own, as Pinchas did, then that is justified according to the halacha of Kanoyim Pogim Bo. Elo midas atzmo asa, but Pinchas acted on his own volition. Masha asa, with what he did. V'lo nimlach b'Sanhedrin klal, and he did not consult with the Sanhedrin at all. Pinchas knew the halacha, he remembered the halacha. There's an issue in which Moshe Rabbeinu himself forgot the halacha, but Pinchas remembered the halacha, and he applied it, and he did not consult with any of the dayanim or courts or with the Sanhedrin. V'lo, not only this, ela shekovash es yitzro, he completely overcame his Yetzer Hara. Pinchas had a Yetzer Hara that said to him, don't get involved, don't take the law into your own hands. But in his mind, he remembered clearly the halacha that Moshe Rabbeinu had taught about Kanoyim Pogim Bo. Upit peit imo. Not only did Pinchas overcome his Yetzer Hara that told him, that was trying to persuade him not to act and not to get involved, but upit peit imo. He mocked his Yetzer Hara. He completely overcame it to such a degree that he was able to mock it and make fun of it. It had no power over him whatsoever. Lahachnis atzmo lesakonos gedolos, to enter, to bring himself into an extremely dangerous situation. Ki de'isa hasamu v'medrash, as it states over there in the Gemara and in the Medrash Rabbah. And what's being referred to is that Chazal tell us, they want us to understand, Pinchas didn't just secretly, privately sneak into a tent and come upon Zimri and Cosby engaging in the sexual immorality and then kill them both quietly and sneak out. That is not what happened. Zimri's whole point was to get as much public publicity as he could to show and to demonstrate to everyone, even to Moshe Rabbeinu, according to Chazal, and to say, look what I'm about to do. I'm about to have relations with this Moabite princess Cosby. No one can stop me because it's not against the law. It's not something that I can be prosecuted about, and everyone should see what I'm about to do. And he not only allowed people to be around, he encouraged people to be around. So Pinchas had to take his life in his hands, literally, in order to go in and come up with a stratagem to be allowed to go to where Zimri was, Zimri and Cosby, and then secretly come up with a plan to hide his weapon and to then suddenly pull it out and kill both of them. And his life was certainly in danger. So not only was his Yetzer Hara trying to persuade him not to do it, but he had to put his life in danger to do what he did. And he completely overcame his Yetzer Hara, and he completely overcame his fear, and he carried out the action according to the halach of Kanoyim Pogim Bo. Next paragraph. Ume'ata, and from now that we understand all of this, Kishem she Yosef, just like Yosef Hatzadik, Shepit Peit B'Yitzro, he also overcame his Yetzer Hara to such a degree that he could mock it. And this, of course, is referring to the incident with Ashes Potiphar, where she was pleading with him and trying her hardest to seduce him, and he refused and he refused. And even when it came to the point that no one was around and the opportunity was clearly there, he still defeated his Yetzer Hara and ran away. So we say that he was Pit Peit B'Yitzro. He also completely overcame his Yetzer Hara. Ola L'Gedula. He rose to great heights. Yosef, of course, rose to tremendous temporal and spiritual heights. He became the second in command of Egypt, as we know, and was the ruler under Paro over this entire world power of Mitzrayim. And not only that, he reached a position of leadership in his family where he was enabled to save Yaakov Avinu, his father, and all of the members of his father's household and his brethren. Umishelo nasnulo. And any reward he was given, he deserved to receive. It's as if he was given it specifically from things that he already possessed because of the actions that he had accomplished. Kidi Isa b'Medrash, as it states in the Medrash Rabbah, Peh shelo noshak la'avera, the mouth of Yosef that did not transgress by kissing, meaning instead of kissing and getting involved physically with Ashes Potiphar, Yosef ran away. He deserved, because of that action, for the pasuk to say about him, "V'al picha yisha kol ami." According to your mouth, this is Paro speaking to Yosef. According to your mouth, Yosef, my nation, all of my people will be supplied. So it's a little bit of a play on the word yishak. Yosef refrained from kissing, which is nishika, from kissing Ashes Potiphar, and therefore he was rewarded with his mouth, which refrained from kissing Ashes Potiphar. He was rewarded that according to his word and his commands, all of the people of Egypt were supplied with their food needs. V'chule, etc. It's a very interesting piece there in the Medrash Rabbah. Goes on to talk about, because of the actions, what he refrained to do with his hand, he was given the rings for a ring of Paro, and his neck, he was given the necklace of Paro, and with his legs, he was allowed to go into the ride in the chariot of Paro. And all of these things that were done were a direct midah keneged midah, a direct reward because of actions that Yosef had done in completely dominating and defeating his Yetzer Hara. Af zeh, so too Pinchas, who completely defeated his Yetzer Hara and overcame all obstacles. Yesh lo lalos legedula. He too should be raised to a great position. V'zocha l'shlosha matanos. And Pinchas, by being turned into a Kohen by the special decree of Hashem, received 3 gifts: Hazaroa, the foreleg of the animal; V'halachayim, and the jaw or the cheek; V'hakeva, and the maw from the stomach area. Kedamrinon b'chulin, as we say, as Chazal say in Maseches Chulin, Zeroa keneged hayad. the foreleg of the animal that people gave to the Kohanim. People would had an obligation under Torah law to give these three parts that were just mentioned, these certain specific parts of animals. When they slaughtered animals to eat the meat, they were obligated to give 3 parts of the animal to Kohanim, to any of the Kohanim, just like you could pick a coin to give truma to, you could pick a coin to give these gifts of meat, of portions of meat. V'roi haya lekach, and he was appropriate for this honor. Lefi shehoya ben puti, because he was a ben puti, but not as a negative. Dahainu shabo mi Yosef. This means he came from Yosef's lineage. De putiel trei mashma, because the name putiel implies 2 different people. It implies Yisro, and it also implies Yosef. Kidi amrina beperek ches de sota, as we say in the 8th parak of Maseches Sota. If you're not familiar with that Gemara, it teaches an incredible idea, and states that Yosef was both a descendant of Yisro and a descendant of Yosef. And the Gemara says, how could he be both? We have a specific pasuk that tells us in the Torah that his father Elazar married Mibenos Putiel, from the daughters of Putiel, and Chazal take that to mean that he married from the daughter or the granddaughter of Yisro, and now you're telling me he's Yichus comes from Yosef. And so the Gemara answers, on one side he came from his mother. On one side came from Yosef, and on one side came from Yisro's lineage. So when we talk about Yisro as when we talk about Pinchas as Ben Puti or Ben Putiel as a descendant of Puti, we have to keep in mind 2 statements by Chazal. The famous statement that this means that Pinchas came from the lineage of Yisro, and that was something that was used against him in an effort to mock him and to make fun of him and to claim that he didn't have the right to do what he did. But also it means, according to this Gemara in Maseches Sota, that he was a descendant of Yosef, and this is extremely fitting, as the Zera Shimshon is explaining to us here, because just as Yosef overcame his Yetzer Hara and was rewarded with great rewards, so too Pinchas overcame his Yetzer Hara and carried out the law of killing Zimri, and he was rewarded with unique and unprecedented rewards. Next paragraph. Since receiving a high position of authority can be a bad thing for a person, because the Gemara in Pesachim says that Rabbanos, and when the Gemara uses Rabbanos, it doesn't mean the way we would use it nowadays in modern times, meaning the rabbinate. Rather, it means positions of authority. The Gemara over in Pesachim says positions of authority bury the ones who have the authority. And the Gemara is pointing out that people who are put, whether it's kings, as the Gemara discusses over there, or whether it's other high officials and people and put in power and positions of ruling over other people, these people often die early and often or they suffer from all kinds of physical ailments and problems because that stem from and come from these positions of authority and power. The im yomos bekotzer shanim, and if Pinchas had died at an early age, yitu ha'olam, the whole world would have made a mistake. The yomru, and they would have mistakenly said, bishvil shechata, it's because the Pinchas sinned. Behariga Zimri, in the killing of Zimri. And Hashem certainly did not want anyone to make that mistake. And so even though Pinchas was elevated to a high position of authority and power, Hashem wanted to absolutely ensure that the common fate of people put in high positions of power, of dying early or suffering other kinds of problems, would not apply to him. Mishum hachi, therefore, hineni nosin lo, therefore Hashem said, behold, I am giving to him as brisi shalom, my covenant of peace. Sheyiyeh chai v'kayom, that he should live and maintain life, a healthy life, kamo malach, like a malach. not like a regular mortal, not like a mere mortal, but like a malach. Pinchas was blessed with an incredible gift of long life. V'tiyeh gedula zu, and this great position that he was rewarded with should be la'olam, forever, lizchus velo chova, to be a benefit for him and not bring anything negative, not have any negative ramifications. And so therefore the psukim now, with the through the Zera Shimshon's explanation, we begin to see the deeper meaning of the psukim. Hashem is coming to tell us Pinchas's lineage in order to be a response to the people who are questioning and making all kinds of allegations about his lineage. That's step one. Step two, Hashem is saying he did absolutely nothing wrong because he was not working within the framework of the court system. He was working independently, correctly so, according to the rule of Kanoim Pogimbo, and therefore he's being rewarded. And in addition to those 2 points, he also is being given the gift of long life in order to make sure that the rewards of authority and power that he receives bring only goodness to him and don't cut short his life, as might happen, according to the Gemara and Pesachim, to other people who are put in positions of power. Continuing with the last paragraph on the page. Since we say that a person who spills the blood of truly wicked, evil individuals, ki'ilu hikriv korban, it is as if that person brought a korban. Mishum hachi, because of this, zocha lios kohen. Pinchas deserved to become, he merited to become a kohen. Roi lehakriv korbanos acherim. And then this gave him the ability to bring real korbanos in the Mishkan. V'ayin od tam acher lekomun b'samach. And look, in the next piece, the Zera Shimshon says in Os Beis, you'll see more of a discussion about this. Al pasuk, on the pasuk tachas asher kinei, which is again right from the beginning of our parsha of Parshas Pinchas, v'chulei, etc. Ulefi shehitil shalom bein Yisrael la'avihem shabashamayim. And since Pinchas's actions brought peace between Bnei Yisrael and their father in heaven, Hashem was angered. Hashem brought a plague against Bnei Yisrael because of the terrible sins committed with the Moabite women and at the Maisa of Baal Peor, and Pinchas's actions brought all of that to a stop and reestablished peace between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael. Because of that, Naaseh Malach, he was turned into a type of Malach, Mevaser, who brings good news, who brings tidings, Sheyovo be'achris hayomim, that he, Pinchas, will have the merit to come at the end of days, Laso Shalom ba'olam, and to bring peace to the world in the Messianic era. And you can see the Zera Shimshon there in the parentheses, quotes from the Yalkut Shimoni. If you look at the Yalkut Shimoni there, you'll see it comes right out and explicitly states that the Pinchas ze Eliezer, Pinchas, I'm sorry, ze Eliyahu. Pinchas's neshama was the neshama of Eliyahu. And when we talk about Eliyahu coming and announcing the arrival of Mashiach, that's the neshama of Pinchas. And Pinchas merited that by bringing peace in this incident in our Parsha, at the end of Balak and the beginning of Parshas Pinchas, and therefore he will bring the one to bring the peace and announce the coming of Mashiach, b'mehera b'yameinu, speedily and in our days. Yasher koch to everyone for participating tonight, and we look forward, God willing, to learning together again in the Zera Shimshon in a timely fashion next week.